All right, what's happening, people? It is 7 p.m. We are live. So now we're going to talk about fueling for victory. This is all about how to prime yourself with your food, nutrition, hydration, and supplements to prepare yourself for victory at USS Nationals 2024. So if you are watching the replay, usually get this to about 7:05. So if you want to pop about 5 minutes ahead on the replay, you can kind of get right into it. If not, you can hear me ramble a little bit, and I'll go over this once we get into the formal presentation. But first off, we have a handout guide with some room to take notes down below in the description of the video, just so you can kind of follow along and maybe make your own notes on this subject. It's really important. You know, any big competition, every little detail matters. Everything you do is important. So if you want to be the top, last year I had, I believe, 50 people in my class. And if you want to be number one, you've got to check all of the little boxes. So the last couple of weeks, we've done different seminars, which you can go and look on my channel right now. We talked about high performance habits. We talked about mindset. We talked about the mistakes that people are going to make going into nationals. I really recommend watching that one because I guarantee you're going to see a lot of the same mistakes over and over and over again, as you will in nutrition. So I've seen firsthand a lot of people have really excellent preps, and then in the days or day or minutes leading up to competition, they do something really silly with their nutrition, and it just wastes all this time. This is an important thing to you. So you're spending a lot of money, spending a lot of time, effort, mental energy. So why would we not check all these boxes with our nutrition and make sure that we're fueling this high performance machine that is our body, that is our system to put in that high level performance. So we're going to give this about 1 more minute here, and then we're going to jump right in. Okay, going to have a couple different categories we're going to go over. We're going to just run through some notes on the whiteboard. But if you're watching the replay, you got any questions, feel free to comment. Hit me up on Instagram or any social media platform. My channel is the same everywhere, at Stephen M. Coyne. You can give me a follow, all this and that, good stuff. So, got some notes here on my phone I'm going to read off, hope you don't mind. About 20 seconds. If anybody is a late straggler, you can go ahead and pop on in. I just don't understand this. It's really something I don't get, why people don't take their nutrition seriously. If you're going to drive a Lamborghini, you don't just put crap fuel into it. You're putting the best high-octane performance fuel into that so it can be at its best, and you are no different. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. What I want you to think about is what poor nutrition might do. Okay, so poor nutrition could give you muscle cramps. It could give you brain fog. You could feel sluggish. You could be literally bloating. You could have indigestion. Imagine if you're going for a high rep event or a maximal event. It doesn't really matter. If you have indigestion, you feel like you're going to shit yourself, you feel like you might throw up, you're not really going to be able to apply 100% of your focus, effort, and energy into performing correctly. You're going to have a little trickle in the back of your mind that's thinking, what if I shit myself, right? Or you might, then you got to deal with that. We've all had good days in training and bad days where we go into the session and we either feel amazing or we feel bad. We want to feel good going into this. Again, we spend so much time, effort, and energy getting ready for this that we have to show up as our best. If you are showing up at your best, you already have an advantage. At competitions like this, you separate yourself from the field because what do a lot of people do? Think about any strongman competition that you've been to. People are not hydrated enough. They're eating stupid snacks. They ate something dumb the night before. I kid you not. I've been to a competition before. I'm going to give you 2 examples. I saw somebody eating concession stand food the day before OSG. Guess what? They did terrible. And also at Florida's Strongest Man, there was a group of people that went out to get ramen and fried Korean food. I do not understand why. It was some special restaurant they had never been to. They thought it sounded cool, and they all went, and half of them were literally shitting themselves the next day. So why in the world would you do that? So when we're considering what food and fuels we're going to have, the first thing we need to consider is, what is our current status? We're about 5 weeks out right now. So what's your weight class and what is your current body weight? Okay. So this goes into, are you going to have to do a weight or water cut going into this? You should know this right now. Now, in general, I do not recommend more than a 5% water cut. That's where things start to get a little treacherous, and you really need to be under the guidance of a professional to be going through this, especially if you have never done it before. Anybody can sweat out 5-ish%. You can cut all your sodium out. You can fast and easily drop 3 to 5%. So if you're there, this should be no problem. But if you are now a couple weeks out and you're 7, 8, 9% out, what you need to do is have the appropriate strategy to slowly start chipping away at your weight without sacrificing too much food that's going to take away from your training. The last thing that you should be doing is going into any sort of drastic cut just to make weight. I've seen people that have tried to drop 30 to 40 pounds only weeks away from nationals, and it never goes well. So you need to be weighing certain things in your head right now. It's like, well, if I can get close, then you're going to give yourself a fighting shot to do a successful cut, make your weight class, and then do okay. But you should not rule out entirely going up a weight class if you have to. Look, that's not ideal, but we have to remember in the long-term journey, this is not the end of the line for our strongman journey. So if you have to go up a weight class, guess what? You're going to be peaked because you should be following a proper training program. Maybe you could try some stuff that forces you to set a PR, and you're going to have a good moral, personal victory that day, even though you didn't make the weight class you wanted. The last thing we want is to cut, have horrible energy going into our training, a horrible water cut that we miss weight, and then we have to go up. I've seen people miss weight by 8 pounds, and then they went up a weight class, and they did terrible in 3 out of the 5 events. That is awful. So what we're looking to do here, if you can, is drop 1 to 2 pounds per week at most. Okay? At most. We can do this by cutting out 200 to 300 calories per day from our metabolic rate. If you don't know these things, there's lots of calculators online. You can consult me, give me a DM, reach out. We can talk about what that means for you. Get a food tracking app, start tracking your foods, which is what you should be doing anyways. But if we're doing more than 1 to 2 pounds a week, then we're taking away from our lean muscle tissue, which we need to perform. We need to be having enough protein, carbs, fats to fuel our training. So you should not be doing more cutting than 1 to 2 pounds per week. Currently, 3% away at holding. So that's perfect. That's exactly where you need to be. If you were 3% away right now, I would recommend just holding on tight, and then you have an easy water cut from there. Now, in a water cut, as I said before, up to 5%. I do not recommend doing any more than 5%. It just takes away from your performance. Now, there are certain things that you can do to really help that process. This is not a water cut seminar, but if you're interested in that, we have a full water cut seminar and guide to cutting water in the Strongman Club at clubstrongman.com. Check it out. It's in there. But that's not what this is about. What you need to be doing now, in order to ensure a successful water cut, is follow your diet and be hydrated. So when we do a water cut, the process of this is we're just stripping everything out of our body. We're detoxing and eliminating all fluids by getting rid of salt, getting rid of foods that hold water, by sweating, getting that water out of our system, our skin, our organs, and also then we have to rehydrate back up. So what we want to happen in the weeks leading up to this is doing that on sort of a smaller level. So you want your body in a state right now where it's consuming a lot of water and flushing out regularly. So you need to be finding ways of sweating out a lot all the time now and rehydrating, because then when it's time to do that in an extreme, then you will be much more ready and adapted in order to do that. So it's summer, it's heating up. If you are in Florida like me and a lot of others that are in the club going to nationals, then this is no problem. You should be getting a gallon of water a day already as is, and you're going to be sweating it out. So when it's time to force all of that out of your system, your body knows how to sweat, it knows how to absorb water back in, and you'll be good to go. But it's not just about water. It's also about your foods, macronutrients, and especially those micronutrients. This is a big difference maker in people, because people that follow all of their micronutrients on top of their macros break things down to the smallest levels with our hormones, our organs, our cellular hydration to ensure that all processes in the body are firing at a very good rate. Now think about, right, like the kidneys. The kidney's job is to partially flush fluids in and out of your system. If you're not eating foods that support that job, then you just cannot do that as efficiently. If you have your kidneys and other things that detox your system, like your liver or your pancreas, if those are firing at full power, they're going to be able to flush all of those things out and also bring it back in better. So hit your micros. We are at enough time right now, about 5 to 6 weeks away, where if we start doing that, we can lock it in. Green vegetables, red meat, iron in your blood so that your body can just handle all of these things, okay? Now, when we want to refeed, though this is the next step in this process, what you want to make sure you're doing is taking in a lot of carbohydrates, okay? Refeed. We're looking for carbs, water, plus salt. Now, what I want you to think about is when we're talking about fueling for game day, is a lot of this is turned up from what we should be doing in our normal training every day. So guess what? If you're training really hard, especially for strongman, your ATP and all those power systems that fuel explosive strength movements run on carbohydrates. So obviously, at a strongman competition, that's what you need in order to succeed. It's totally different from something like endurance running, where you need a lot more fats because that's a slower digesting type of energy that's going to allow you to break into those different types of energy systems for running. If you are doing this cut right now, you still need to be having a pretty ample amount of carbs, because that's just what we need. So consider when it's time to refeed, if we're trying to cut weight or if we're just not following a proper protocol for our foods that does not include carbohydrates, we're not going to be able to efficiently utilize carbohydrates, which should be our prime fuel and power source on game day. Now, when you're refeeding, what you have to consider is that protein is really, its only job is to restore, repair, and rebuild the damage that's been created in your muscles in order to allow them to grow back bigger and stronger. When we strip all of this water out of our system, we need carbohydrates as a vessel to retain water, because every single gram of carbs holds, I think it's 4 grams of water. So we need all of those carbs to help pull that water back in to fill back out our muscle glycogen and our liver glycogen, and then have our glycogen stores ready to go. These glycogen stores is really where the specific energy type that I'm talking about that's converted into ATP and your like power systems, that's where we get our fuel from. So you have to have a good high amount of carbs to basically just fill out your gas tank. But if you're not doing that regularly in training now, then you cannot efficiently uptake all of this now. So carbs, water, salt. Now, when you're refeeding though, it's not just carbs all day long. You actually do want some fats at the end of the day, okay? Fats and protein slow your digestion. So when you do your weigh-in, let's say you go and weigh in at 10 a.m., you should be carbs all day. It should be a mix of some slow digesting carbohydrates and fast digesting carbohydrates. Me personally, I go from anywhere from 800 grams to 1,000 grams of carbs for my refeed in that day. And then my last meal of the day is steak, eggs cooked in butter with some smoked salmon. So it's high saturated fats that does a few things. It restores the triglycerides that's in our body. It also restores our hormonal imbalances, because part of what happens in a water cut is actually a hormone balancing situation that forces a lot of that water out of you. So we need to get good saturated fats back in our system in order to just restore our normal order. Now, I also recommend that for the breakfast the day before comps. So comp day, we'll come right back to that in just a second. Okay. Now, all foods that you should be eating at any time. Again, I want you to like really make these connections about how when I'm talking about what we do at competition should be a turned up version of what we're doing in our day to day. When we are refeeding and both eating for comp day and then of course eating for our training, we should be having foods that are very digestible and easy to process. So this means for our refeeds and our game day competition, no fried foods. We don't want things that are packed and processed and super overloaded with sodium. Now, I want to be very careful about this distinction because I said here we want carbs, water, and salt. But when we have things like processed foods, those frozen foods that are packaged and meant to live in freezers forever and ever and ever, those have anywhere from 10 to 15 times the amount of sodium that you should be getting in one meal, on top of being packed with a whole bunch of preservatives that's going to be hard to digest. So we want good, clean, lean sources of electrolytes, especially some with potassium. So one of my biggest recommendations for that is actually Body Armor. I like the Body Armor powders because those have a higher level of concentration of potassium than anything else. We want those types of salts instead of like the processed packaged foods, all right? And not these greasy, fried foods that slow down our digestion. After you refeed, you do kind of want to get to a point to where you're really full. If you've been fasting and haven't been drinking any water at the same time, your body's going to go into a little bit of a shock after you slam those drinks down, get your sugars in. For me, it's rice and honey. After you get all of that in, what you need to do is slam all of that in and either stay standing if you're in line to go do your check-ins or this and that, or go for a walk. Walking is going to help all of those processes turn back on and help you digest food so you can do it again a little later. My honest recommendation is to try to do this. By this, I mean have a meal every 90 minutes to 2 hours. So you want to get to a point of carbs where you're feeling real full with highly digestible foods about every 2 hours, and then go for a walk. So what typically happens, when people go to travel at shows or they go to check-ins is they can slip out of some of their normal behaviors and habits. Again, let's keep hitting this topic of what we're doing for game day should be turned up versions of what we're doing in our everyday life. Right now, I'm somebody who gets 10,000 steps a day. I track it. It's a good thing for my recovery, my overall metabolic conditioning. But if I'm going to travel, let's say it's to Charlotte, North Carolina this year for nationals, it's super easy to get out of routine because I'm in a different place. I'm staying somewhere. I'm going through different processes as I'm trying to sweat out. So you might not be getting that same amount of activity as you would day to day. So it's important to get those steps in, stay moving, and stay active, because not only is it going to help you digest your food, but it's going to just continue that recovery process that happens all the time. If you're doing a proper training program, you should have a peak where you're way dialed off and you're backing off all the weights the week before competition, but you still are having levels of recovery in all aspects of your body and brain, head to toe, that you need to be forcing the blood flow through this whole system of by doing things like walking. You could also bring stretch bands and do like some light pump workouts or something very light just to get full body blood flow in. But again, these are all things you need to be doing day to day. So when we're actually at comp day, as I said, with the refeeds, you do want to start your day with some sort of protein and fat. I have the exact same meal for dinner the night before competition and for breakfast. For me, it is steak, eggs, salmon, all cooked in butter. Very straightforward. We have good high saturated fats that's giving us some good long-term energy throughout the day. But we want this breakfast at least 2 to 3 hours away from any time we're competing. Reason being is just what I talked about. Carbs are the energy source that we need for explosive, powerful movements that all of Strongman is. So we want enough time away from breakfast to our first event to where all that stuff's going to be digested out of us. About 3 hours is ideal. And then what we want is just carbs all day long. Protein, again, is just that building block that's going to allow us to recover, repair, and then regrow our muscles from our training. So we don't need that in the middle of competition. What matters the most is that we're keeping our gas tank very, very full. A lot of those recovery processes, even though we may want that after competition, we're not flipping that switch from competing to recovery until after the day is over. So easy, digestible carbs. Once again, stuff we need to be doing all the time. My personal favorite is dextrose powder, okay? Other things I may have, though, if I don't have access to that when I'm traveling, is orange juice, honey, fruits, things that are very easily digestible for me, okay? So you should start identifying those things now and go in with a game plan. You should not be going to the store the day before thinking, oh, what am I going to have? No, you need to be planning right now what foods fuel me for the best, highest level of performance in my training, and that's what you need to start doing right now. I personally would suggest to shy away from, the artificial-ish stuff like Gatorades, but if that's what, works really well for you, it's high sugar, it's going to get in and out of your system really quick, then heck yeah, go for it, okay? But what you don't want is to eat full meals or have fatty foods or really even have like a whole lot of protein if we're banging out these 5 events over one day. Now, this could change a little bit if you have 2 events per day and they are 4 hours apart from each other. In that situation, then I may suggest having a little bit of a full meal after, because you're going to have enough time to get this stuff out of your system and then like recaffeinate up 4 hours later. It'll just be like doing a 2-day workout, right? So why don't we take that into our next note is supplements. Okay, biggest mistake people make is misusing their caffeine and their stimulants. We talked about this in the video last week, top 10 mistakes that people will make at USS Nationals. And one of them is just misuse of their stimulants. So when we're going through all of these processes with the water cuts and the refeeds, one thing that you should know is that caffeine does raise your heart rate a little bit. It is going to help you increase your rate of sweating. However, the further you can stay away from caffeine leading up to competition, the more of a performance enhancing boost it is going to give you when you need it the most. Caffeine is a bona fide performance enhancer, so you need to understand how you are going to most effectively utilize it, okay? Plain and simple. Other things that you may want as well are BCAAs. And let me tell you why. This is something that I learned from Stan Efferding in the vertical diet is when you're doing water cuts, if you're doing a lot, then actually you can measure how much water you may allow yourself versus how much you need to lose. So 16 ounces of water adds 1 pound of body weight if you drink it. But when we're in these extreme periods of dehydration, we are eating away a little bit at muscle tissue. It's just part of the game. So you have to accept that. It's not going to be so much that it's going to wreck your performance, but you can have maybe 4 ounces of water with unflavored BCAAs in your water cut to keep your muscles as fresh and as recovered as possible. Now, I also know that I tend to fill up a little bit better in my muscles when I have BCAAs, whether that's before a workout or not. So I'm going to include this in my refeed beverages. So I'm going to have BCAAs with my carbs, with my water, with my salt. My personal favorite go-to actually is to have Powerade Zero and one of these Body Armor packets, again, because of the potassium in that. Why the Powerade Zero? It's because I really like those the most. I have an easier time drinking that. So even though those don't necessarily have all those sugars, I'm going to have that with coconut water. I'm going to have that with honey. I'm going to have that with rice. So that's where I'm getting my carbs, right? The other thing that you need to still be making sure you're having is creatine. As you know, or you should know, creatine is one of the most thoroughly studied and scientifically verified and proven effective supplements. So we know it works. Why would you not utilize it? Creatine does go through a loading phase, and yes, it does hold water in your system. So a lot of people ask this question a lot of like, well, if I'm trying to cut as much water as possible, should I still be taking my creatine? And the answer honestly is like, yes, the net benefit of having creatine in your system is far greater for your performance than the pound or pound and a half that it's going to add of water. So if you really are at a point where you're unable to cut a pound or a pound and a half of water, you're so deep in it, you went way too far with your diet and all of that anyways. So you should make sure you have your creatine in there. Other things are NO boosters, okay? Such as L-arginine, or a lot of people like beet or beetroot powder. So this is just a product that's going to dilate, that's going to expand your blood vessels, so that's going to allow better nutrient delivery into your muscles. So when we combine that, we're going to allow all of these foods that we need to cram back into our system a better chance to go exactly where they need to go faster. Okay. Now, I've also heard, can't back this up, you might have to try it for yourself, but if you are traveling to somewhere that's got a different climate, maybe from high elevation to low elevation, hot to cold, that these NO powders help you adapt better to different types of climates and environments. So it's just a thing that's kind of worth having on hand, and you got to try this out and experiment for yourself. Another one that I really recommend is L-carnitine. And why L-carnitine? L-carnitine just helps your body more efficiently utilize fats. So as we said with our refeed processes and our eating with dinner before and the morning of competition, we should be having fats in there. But we're setting our body through a whole lot. We're trying to eliminate as much out of it as possible and then pretty much throw in as much as we can back to back. So these are all things that are going to help us absorb all the foods that we're putting in. So if we have L-carnitine with that evening fatty meal and that morning of game day fatty meal as well, we're going to more efficiently utilize those fats in those foods, okay? So these are a few things there. Now, the other and kind of final point that I want to make on this is routine. I've been talking this whole presentation about how we're really looking to take a lot of good, successful patterns from our everyday life and training processes and just amplify them in the right ways to perform at our best. So you should right now already know these are the foods that I feel best on. When I eat this in the morning, I train like an absolute savage in the gym. Or, it's for me, it's when I have dextrose before, like the second I start my workout, I feel more energy the whole entire time. Another one for me, if I have sweet potatoes the day before I train real heavy, I don't know what it is, but I feel stronger. This is how I got to my own personal formula of having steak, eggs, and salmon all cooked in butter the night before competition, is because those foods make me feel strong as crap. All right? You don't want to be eating chicken because, first off, they're nervous birds. You don't want to be nervous at competition, but you want to have something that's making you feel real strong at competition. It's a mental and physical thing. Remember, these things always go both ways. So if you're eating stuff that you know is going to make you feel strong, then you will be strong. It's just that simple. So how can you include those concepts in your daily routine right now and then just stay in rhythm at competition? This is not the time to try some new supplement or try that new spicy Thai joint down the street or eat concession stand food or do something stupid that you've never done before. We want to fall back on our successful patterns, rhythms, and behaviors. And that means, not just our foods, but also the way we live our lives. I was talking about, our step count and our activity level. We want our body to be in this high performance homeostasis, which we should be in already. So how can we lock in all of these routines now? Warm-ups, sleep, recovery, eating, so that all we have to do is just keep continuing to show up and then apply it at nationals. When we do this successfully, we're going to be able to eliminate a lot of competition anxiety and nerves and jitters. So many people get caught up in their heads about the big stage or all these what ifs. What if I blank? What if I blank? But the reality is if you're doing all of the things that work, then you can get rid of a lot of those questions because you're prepared. A lot of competition anxiety just comes from leaving a lot of these boxes unchecked. You don't want to be out there wondering, well, what if I just ate better 4 weeks ago? Or like, what if I figured out better carbs that agreed with my stomach 6 weeks ago? If you start these things, which hopefully you're already doing, but if you start them now, you still have plenty of time to show up at the very, very, very highest level at nationals. So routine. I cannot stress how important that is. You want to just build rep after rep after rep of successful pattern so that it is just who you are and you know exactly what is going to fuel you and support you to success. So that is how we fuel for victory. I'm going to leave this up here for about another minute or so, but if you're just joining, I have a handout that's in the description of this YouTube video right here. So you can click it, get a copy. There's some room for you to make some notes of your own. But if you have any questions, I would love to field some. And as a reminder, you absolutely should never, ever just wing a water cut, especially if you've never done it. Doing it up to 5% is, it's never really advised, but you can get away with a pretty safe one and then refeed and refuel up for high performance. It can be done at higher levels. If you want to learn more about that, we have a full water cut guide and seminar inside the Strongman Club at clubstrongman.com. But that's not what this is about. This is just about concepts to get you to the top. Carbs, carbs, carbs. Carbs that agree with your stomach. Carbs that fuel you for success. As I've said several times, I really like my white rice and my honey, my orange juice. Those are my go-tos, especially that orange juice. Lots of vitamin C in there. It's going to give me good strength in my muscles. So lots of good stuff there. But all right, guys, about 30 more seconds here. If you have any questions, please fire away. Had a few people joining us on this seminar tonight. And we've got, now this is the fourth one. We'll be back here same time, same place next week. Hydrate right here. But if you want to see any more, there's 4 more that are, this is the fourth actually. This is, there are 3 more on my YouTube channel. So just go look at the history on top of a lot of other cool stuff. I've got some technique tutorials, some mindset videos, a lot of things that's just all designed to help you become a better, stronger you without any gimmicks, without any, stupid hashtags or, flaming opinions on Instagram or any of that nonsense. Real deal stuff that, I've learned through a lot of trial and error. So I just want to save you a bunch of time, help you learn from my mistakes, and help you apply these concepts to be your best. So, all right, I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you want a full water cut seminar and guide and a lot more, check out clubstrongman.com. We've got a 7-day free trial right now. But either way, reach out if you have any questions. I am here to help. Keep training hard. Get your recovery in. Make sure you're on top of your diet. We are still far out enough to where you can make big changes in the right direction if you need to. We're not so close that you can't do anything else. We're still far enough to where you can really make changes if you have to. So be honest and objective with yourself about what you need to do to succeed and make those changes if you have to. Carol, thank you so much. I appreciate it. If there's anything else that you would maybe like to know more about, please let me know. I've got some topics lined up, but I'm always happy to, dig in and see what people need. These are just things that I think will help out. And I just appreciate all of you guys watching and tuning in, because a lot of people won't. I keep saying, I guarantee that you're going to see a lot of these mistakes happen over and over. It's because I've been to so many shows as an athlete, as a promoter, as a judge, a volunteer, as a spectator, that these things just keep happening over and over and over again. And I am shaking my head. I don't understand why we spend so much time, effort, energy, money to just do this thing. Why would we not try to put a little bit more homework into, figuring out like, okay, well, how do I really get the most out of this? So I just appreciate you guys tuning into this, because I want to see everybody succeed. So even if you're here, that means, hey, you are learning. I hope you apply this stuff, and I really, really hope that you crush it. So as always, reach out to me, anybody that's watching on Instagram, Facebook, X, Twitter, whatever. Stephen M. Coyne. Have a championship night.